Do you love solving puzzles? If yes, our guest today has spent the last 47 years getting paid to do that. As a software engineer, he has tackled everything from building the foundation of Google Drive to enhancement of operating system. Join us as he shares his experiences, his passion for coding, and the project that shaped his career, and why he still loves writing codes after all these years. So let's start the podcast.
So, Jim, please give us a short intro.
Well, like he said, I've been developing software for a very long time. Um, Started out, in college writing, all kinds of different languages. Um, Spent 4 years in the U.S. Army, and then after that, became a system programmer at Marietta Aerospace, um, doing stuff in COBOL and assembler language, and became kind of an expert in the IBM 370 assembler. Worked for a small startup called VM Systems Group that was writing system enhancements for the VM operating system. And then at Storage Tech, worked on the software on the mainframe that controlled their robotic tape libraries. Toward the end of that, I switched straight from assembler language into Java, and I've been writing Java for the last 25 years. Had a couple of small jobs, and I spent 12 years at Google. I was the fourth person on the project that eventually grew to be Google Drive. And since then I've worked at a small company called Avero, and worked for RingCentral, the business communication company, and just started work at Geico like 2 months ago.
So, can you share your most memorable experiences from your early days as a software engineer?
Yeah, back at Martin Marietta, I was my job was a system programmer. We were the people who kept the mainframe operating systems running efficiently. One of the fun projects I had, we were using the old chain drive printers, which are probably, people don't even know what those are anymore. And we wanted to go to cut sheet printers. And IBM sold one that was very, very expensive and didn't have all the features we wanted. And Xerox sold one that was exactly what we wanted, but IBM didn't support it for connection to the VM operating system. So I made some modifications to VM to make that work, and that was a fun project. One of the more fun ones I've done in my whole career.
Tell us in detail about your contribution to Google Drive.
Yeah, I started at Google in 2006, and there was a small team that had just formed. They had a word processor called Writely that they had acquired, and when you logged into Writely, you could see a list of your documents. And they also had Google Sheets, which was brand new. And if you logged on to Google Sheets, you could see a list of your spreadsheets. Google decided they wanted to put these together into a Google Docs, and they wanted a consolidated list that would show spreadsheets and documents in the same window. So Google has a concept called system services. So in Writely, we published a system service, which is basically a set of interfaces that a system can implement, and then Writely can call them and get information back. So we implemented a system service where we could ask, show me a list of all your content. So Spreadsheets implemented it, and this was probably around December of 2006. We pushed our code out, and it went live, and it worked. And earlier in my career, when I was writing software, as many as a few hundred people might use it. And here, this is millions of people using it, and that's quite a nice feeling.
How difficult it was in 2006?
I don't know, things were different back then at Google. Uh,
Mm.
uh, Nowadays, it's all very organized. They have all kinds of infrastructure built. They have really great build tools. You know, they've got a big architecture for doing developing your software and for deploying the software. But when we were first starting out, we didn't have any of that stuff. You know, you had Bigtable, which was the storage mechanism that, you know, everybody had to use. And the build tool was an enhanced version of Make, like CMake. One of the bad extensions they had added was that you could just put arbitrary Python code into your build files and have it execute and do stuff, which is a bad idea, but people did it. And when you were building the system, you were doing it on your local development box, and it could run literally for hours because the hardware wasn't that good then.
Mm.
And so it took a long time to get things done, but by the time I left Google, this was in 2018, and they'd had this for several years. In order to build something, you just point at the repository and say, "Hey Google, build this," and it all happens off in the cloud, and it only takes 5 minutes, and you get your results
Yes,
back.
again.
They mandated code reviews, which is a very good thing, but the the tools for reviewing your code weren't very good. They were very manual. You had to email comments back and forth, and one of the Google employees at that time was Guido van Rossum, which is a name lots of people may recognize. He was the father of Python. So he was developing code review tools in Python, and he made things a whole lot better. You could look at the code in your browser. You could make comments. It would ensure that comments were resolved before you checked it in. It would ensure that you had approvals before you checked it in. So, the whole time I was there, the tools just kept getting better and better, and work got easier and easier.
So, back in your time in Google, how your day looks like in Google, like in when you are in Google.
At just about like everywhere else, Google has very, very nice offices. Our first office in Boulder wasn't really a super nice office. It was an acquisition. There was a small company called Atlas Software that wrote a drawing tool called SketchUp that Google wanted to acquire, and they turned it into a Google office. And their office was in a little old drafty building, and it was actually on Boulder, Colorado has a pedestrian wall with street musicians and all this, and they were right outside our window. So you'd be trying to concentrate, and somebody would start playing trumpet outside outside the building.
Okay.
And they did serve lunch to everybody. That's been a perk at Google forever. But they had a caterer, brought food in on trucks, and we all sat around the office.
Okay.
And then we moved to a much nicer office that they had done a lot of construction in. Still didn't have a kitchen, but then they expanded that office and built a really nice cafeteria for us. But it's like any other office. You come in, you go to work, you have lunch. They had micro kitchens with snacks that you could get anytime you wanted. But one thing about Google is it's filled with really, really smart people. And I learned an awful lot from the people who worked there.
What is the one thing that Google looks into candidate? Like if someone wants to apply, so what is the thing?
They just want to hire really good software engineers. People who can write code, people who can solve problems, who can graph concepts quickly, people who can learn things quickly. And there's another quality. They want people who are googly, and those are people who are, eager to learn, who get along with people, who can interact, with people, and really be dedicated to the job. I did a lot of interviewing at Google, and there's one guy I interviewed. He was really brilliant, and he knew it. And I was asking him interview questions, and he was arguing with me over the answers, telling me that I was wrong,
Mhm.
and it just really arrogant about the whole thing. And one of the questions you had to answer is, would you want to have this person on your team? And my answer to that was
Mhm.
no. And as bright as he was, he did not get hired.
Nice. So how different was interviews in US in Google or compared to in India? Like in India, mostly they focus on DSA.
The essay?
DSA.
Okay, right. I didn't have that. When I was, they changed the interview process over the years. When I
Mm.
first, when I interviewed, you had 2 phone screens, and then 6 in-person interviews at the Google office, because Boulder didn't have anybody who was certified to interview at that time. I'd only been there about 6 months. And
Mm.
so my phone screens, I was working for a company in downtown Denver, and I couldn't do the interview in the office.
Mm.
So I went out to like a public square, um, with traffic all around and crowd noise and people walking past, and it was a phone interview, and they were asking me to write code, and I was writing it on a yellow legal pad and reading it to them. So apparently those went okay.
Mm.
So they flew me out to the Google campus in Mountain View. Um, I left after work on Thursday. The plane was delayed. I got to my hotel about 2 o'clock in the morning. Um, Went to the Google office, had to be there at 8, and the recruiter had kind of forgotten me. He was in a meeting when I arrived. So, somebody got me. They took me to, the first interview, and,
Mm.
I was doing really, really well. And like in the middle of the 5th interview, late in the afternoon, I just kind of hit a wall. I just, and I just had to tell them, if I'm answering things quickly, it's because I'm very short on sleep and I'm tired. But I apparently did okay, because they hired me a while later. Now you have 3. I mean, they cut it to 3 interviews because they're a very data-driven company, and they've discovered that 6 interviews does not tell them any more than 3. They're all now done, on video chat. We have a shared online, cloud word code IDE for writing
Mm.
code. I would ask them some questions. It always included a coding problem. Then you send your feedback. So it's much less stressful than it was when I was doing it in 2006.
Over the decades, how you adapted to the rapid technology advancement?
I've never had a problem adapting to new technology. It's I've kind of been stuck in like 2 lanes. Um,
Mm.
like I said, I was working in IBM 370 assembler language, and it was at Storage Tech, and they had a history of doing layoffs late in the year. Their CEO believed in something called ratio management. It's a kind of a turnaround technique, but this is what he was stuck on. At the beginning of the year, they project the revenues, and each department is allocated a percentage of the revenue as their yearly budget. And if revenues fall short, then your budget is cut retroactively. And all the managers knew this, so they would buy all their software and hardware first thing in the year before their budget got cut. So if revenue fell short in the fourth quarter, there's only one thing left to cut, and that's people. So there was a history of, holiday layoffs, and I didn't want to be caught in that. So I transferred over to a project that was written in C, and I worked on it for a couple of months, but then the library people borrowed me back because they couldn't find people who were good at assembler language. And then a few more years went by, and I transferred out to a project that was going to be written in C++. And I just had time to finish the C++ course before they borrowed me back. So then I ran into a manager who had worked in the tape division, which is where the library was. I'd moved over to the disk division and asked if he had any spots. And he said, sure, I do. So I transferred over there where it was really hard to be borrowed back. And he said, well, I've got this project we're starting in this language called Java. Are you interested? And I said, sure, why not? So, that was in 2000. And I've been writing Java ever since.
What are your thoughts on the potential of AI?
I think it has promise. I think it has an awful long way to go. I don't think it'll ever take the place of human creativity. It may be that we might be able to specify things in more of a meta language and say, translate this into Java. It may get to that point, but I think it's a long way off. When I was at my last job, I did it like a 30-day trial on IntelliJ's AI assistant, and it did a really good job of analyzing the code and explaining it, which is a big help. It did a really good job at suggesting refactoring, picking out pieces of code that needed to be refactored. But then I actually hit the button and said, okay, do this refactoring. And the code wouldn't compile. Like, it defined a method, that used a parameter that hadn't included in the method signature. It would just, and that's kind of put me off their code generation capability. I assume it will get better in the future, but I don't have any great insight into AI.
So, what advice would you give to younger software developers?
What I tell people, I get asked this question a lot on LinkedIn. It's basically find something that you really like doing, that engages you intellectually and that you enjoy, and make yourself really, really good at it. And, stick with it, keep trying to get better, every day, try to just make yourself better. If you get to the point where you're not enjoying it, then go find something else. Because, I've been writing software for a very long time, and I still enjoy it. It's still fun. I love solving puzzles. And to me, writing a program is solving a puzzle. And, one time at Google, they were starting a project to be able to store and play music in Google Drive. This was back, in the early days, you could only see Google Docs. And then they added the capability to view PDFs. And they decided they wanted to support other file types like videos and music. And I really love music. And I said, oh, I want to work on that. So I moved over to this group that was, developing all these capabilities for other file types. Word documents were another part of it, but they acquired that piece. So I like doing back-end work. I really don't enjoy the front end, and I'm not good at it. I don't like JavaScript as a language, and the job gradually got into where it was like half JavaScript and half, Java, and that was okay, although I really didn't care for it too much. And then, that project was done. And I said, okay, all you guys are going to move on to the front end team and do JavaScript all the time. And I said, nope. And so I went back to the back end drive team and asked if I could come back, and they wanted me back. So that's if I had gotten put onto that front end team, I would have hated it and I'd have burned out. And so, if you get into a situation where you're working on stuff you don't like, try to find your way back to something you do.
So How you manage like work-life balance?
I try to have a lot of outside activities. And the companies that I've worked for, I mean, Google supported, work-life balance. The other companies I've worked with do. My wife and I love to travel. We've traveled lots of places all over the world. I've been to like 39 countries. She's been to 44 because she's been a few, before we got married. So we
Mm.
love, seeing different cultures. I also, like I said, I love music. I play an instrument in a concert band and enjoy, doing that. I try to stay involved in the community, get out and exercise. I try to keep work, my work and home life in balance. And I guess I've been fortunate. The companies I've worked for all supported that.
That's great. So after your initial retirement, you rejoined another company.
Yeah, back in April, I turned 70 and I retired.
Yeah.
It wasn't entirely voluntary. I had a disagreement with the company CEO, and so I left. And I spent about several months being bored. I missed coding. I missed interacting with a team. Um,
Mm.
couldn't find anything that was really engaging enough to replace that. So I was really lucky. When I retired, I did a post on LinkedIn just, detailing, what I'd done. And I had maybe 300 connections. And I sent this out
Okay.
and figured nobody would care except maybe some of the people I'd worked with. And it kind of went viral. I have no idea why.
Yeah.
It's got 750,000 views, and requests to connect came pouring in. I'm almost to like 5,000 connections now. And when I decided to come back, I just said, hey, I swore I'd never do another job hunt, but I've changed my mind. I'm not enjoying retirement. If anybody's looking for a good Java engineer, let me know. And I got bunches of people, asking me. And a guy from Geico passed my information to a VP who passed it to a director who called to talk to me. And it was not an arduous job hunt. Um, I interviewed with them and hired on. So, I feel very, very fortunate because, there's a lot of age discrimination in tech. And I'm old enough that, I actually sent out a couple of resumes and, no response, crickets. And a recruiter contacted me and said he wanted to send it somewhere. And he said, before he sent my resume out, he wanted me to remove my graduation dates from my college experience and to remove everything before about 20 years ago from my resume. So I did that and still didn't get a response. Like I said, it was not an arduous job hunt. It wasn't months and months long. It was actually more like
Mm.
a month, and people were contacting me, which is really kind of kind of nice.
How it feels after retirement? Mm.
It's like rejoining the world. I mean, it's the I really like my manager. I really like the people I'm working with, even though I haven't met any of them because I'm working from home in my office and they're all working from home and they're scattered all over the United States. So, but everybody's, I'm just enjoying working again. So it's not like, I retired and was enjoying retirement and then got dragged back. No, it was like, this is like rejoining the world again.
How over the decades, how you feel like technology changes and how the impact of social media?
Yeah, technology has, I mean, it's easier to say what hasn't changed. At Martin
Okay.
Marietta, we were working on a 4331 and a 4341 IBM mainframe. And we were
Mm.
supporting, several hundred interactive users. It was a big deal. We upgraded from the 4331 to 4341 and went from 8 to 16 megabytes of real memory, which
Okay. Use.
made everything better. And
Mm.
you have to realize that now this that I carry in my pocket is orders of magnitude more powerful than that mainframe. So the technologies got better and faster. It was, a couple of years after I started at Martin Marietta. That was in 1981. The IBM salesman came by and showed us this brand new thing, this IBM PC. The everything's gotten better and smaller and faster and more capable. Although there is kind of a circle that I like to point out. When we were on this mainframe, we had these terminals, 3270 terminals. They were video terminals with a keyboard, and they had a limited intelligence. You could download code, forms from the mainframe, and you fill out the form, and then you hit enter, and it would submit the data from the form to the mainframe. And then, mainframes are evil. Everybody wants to decentralize and have PCs on their desk. So now you have the web browser, which has some limited intelligence, and you can download a form from the server, and you can fill it out and press enter, and it sends the data off to the cloud. That's that part of the technology. The communication technology is different. When I first started, the internet was it wasn't the internet even, it's still ARPANET. It was limited only to, the federal government and contractors and universities. And there was a Usenet that had, various groups, and there was a group of, VM people called VM Share, and you could ask questions and get answers. You could share code and get comments on it. And that was, the very first networking I had. But then when I was at Storage Tech, this guy was just enamored with this brand new thing called the World Wide Web, and teaching everybody how to use it. And you can find, all kinds of information. When I was first starting out, we would have manuals for the hardware and software that we had. And when you got something new, you would get this bale of manuals, literally like this. And you had to unwrap them and put them into 3-ring binders. And that was your documentation. And when something changed, we got a maintenance release, something would change. They didn't send you new manuals. They sent you pages, and there would be instructions. Okay, remove page 4-7 and replace it with these 2 pages. That's how you got your changes.
All manual.
All manual. And now all that documentation is on the web. You can just find it. And that is both a blessing and a curse, because the people who developed the internet, since it was just for academics and government contractors, they didn't think about security and verification and all this other stuff. And unfortunately, there's a lot of junk on the internet. There's bad information. You have to be careful. And that, to me, is the biggest problem with the generative AI systems, because they're trained on content from the internet, and 90% of what's on the internet is crap. And I think that's a huge problem. Social media, I've participated in it. I was on Google Plus for a while, but that died. I was on Facebook for a while, but after Cambridge Analytica, I swore off. I think social media, again, has become kind of a cesspool. It was originally designed, Facebook was so you could communicate with your friends, but they couldn't make money that way. So they push all kinds of content they think you might be interested in at you from people you don't even know. And I'm just not interested in that. When I was growing up, there wasn't anybody telling you how to have fun. This was the 1960s. Parents weren't as concerned about, letting their kids go outside unsupervised. I'd go out and play touch football with my friends. We'd find things to do. We'd go hiking out in the woods along the creek. And nowadays, I don't think kids do that. They spend so much time on their phones and looking at screens that they don't, grow up interacting with other kids.
So that's it. If you want to add something, please.
No, I'm just happy to have a chance to chat. If people want to contact me on LinkedIn, that's fine. Just look me up, but not if you're a scammer.
So thank you so much, Jim, for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
I'm grateful for your time and your knowledge. Thank you so much.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.